the Ghost Tactical Production Studio, welcome to Tactical Tuesday, streaming live on YouTube and simulcasting as always on GunChannels.com. To check out our entire lineup of videos, podcasts, and live shows, please visit our website, www.ghosttacticalproductions.com.
What is going on, my Ghost Squad? Welcome to Tactical Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, March 12th, 2019. We are going to have a very lively and fun discussion tonight. We are live, as always, on YouTube and simulcasting, as always, on GunChannels.com. If you're not familiar with GunChannels at this point, can't help you. Crawl out from under the rock in which you live and come join us. If you're watching this in replay or listening to this in podcast, welcome to the channel. I hope you guys enjoy the conversation. Before we get going, we invite everybody to thumb this up, comment in the chat, and if you're watching or listening in replay, please leave comments below, and we will try to answer those as we can. If you are trying to ask us a question live, then go ahead and tag one of us on the panel in the YouTube chat or in the Gun Channel side. We'll try to get those questions answered, or you can email them to live@ghosttactical.us, or you can text them to 530-364-4678. So let's say hello to everybody out there, and we will get going. We've got Bucks out there, Gun Loving Grandpa Stanley, Stealth Hunter is out there, P&W Woods, what's going on? Rich White, the 1%'s out there, 2 Live Moo, Jason Stewart, 7 Wonders, Ozzy's out there, Local 223's out there, Kinky's out there. Let's see who else we're missing here. Who else are we missing? I'm gonna catch up here. Stealth Hunter, I think it said Stealth Hunter. Kingpin's out there. What's up, Kingpin? Mad Sexy, Jen Davis. Hello, Jen. How are you? M-W Tactical, Mike's out there and in here. Mr. FNH, what's going on? Budget Guns and Gears is working hard tonight. Guitar Man Pete, what up, Pete? Pete's out there. The Gun Cleaners, what's up, Rod? How you doing, my brother? Travis T's out there. Andrew Faulkner. Let's see here. I'm probably missing someone out there. If I miss you, I apologize. I'll try to catch up. Drucifer's out there. I'll try to catch up. Dan Sowers, how you doing, Dan? Joe Ziola's out there. So we're going to run through our panel real quick and introduce everybody. And I ask everybody out there in the chat, hey, this is going to be an interesting conversation, so I hope everyone has a good time. And speak your mind, keep it professional, keep it civil, keep it respectful. My mods have full authority to do what you got to do if it gets out of hand. I think you guys know what I consider to be out of hand. So JB's out there, Armament and X is out there, and all of that. So let's run through the panel real quick. From Florida, from Skip's Tactical Solutions, we got Avery. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How has your day been?
It was great. How about yours?
Great. Yeah, I saw you and Ken doing a live, I guess, from Orlando this past weekend. And you want to explain about what that thing was? Was it a gala or what was that?
It was a podcasting and just a multimedia expo in Orlando, Florida. So there was a lot of people that showed up. We had Pat Flynn was there, Roberto Blake, John Lee Dumas. And they were just talking about things that are going on in the podcasting and the YouTube space. Flynn was there.
I got you. Yeah, it sounded like you guys were all dressed up, and I was like, "Wow, this is a shindig shig right here," you know?
Yeah, we had fun, and it was nice to actually meet him for the first time.
Yeah, Ken's a great guy. I have not met him in person. Obviously, Mike knows him real well, but yeah, he's a great guy. We go back and forth every now and then, so he's one of the OG godfathers out there. He's especially for podcasters. He was the man, you know, or still is the man, I guess. And from Nebraska, we've got Sandhill Shooter. What's up, Sandy?
Hey, thanks for letting me in tonight.
Love having you. And guys, if you want to go check him out, he's got a chat. Will come on tonight, about an hour and a half after hours, called 2A Tuesday. So go check out Sandhill Shooter out there. And from Ohio, we've got Budget Guns and Gear. What's up, Budget?
Hey, how's it going, Ghost? Glad to be here tonight. Thanks for the invite. This sounds like it's going to be a interesting discussion.
I think it could be, and it'd be a positive, and I hope it'll be a productive discussion. And if you guys haven't checked him out, he does a great show. It's one of my favorite shows. It's every Friday night, called The Ride of the People, and phenomenal show, so go check that out. And from South Carolina, we got Magic Mike. What's up, Mike? You dancing tonight?
What's the word? How's it going for you today?
Good. You gonna dance for us tonight?
This is all you're gonna get.
Oh man, all right. Our ratings would go up a lot if you did. Just saying.
Well, if somebody give at least $50 in the super chat, I might break out some dance moves.
Now,
what we giving the super chat to this month? Who's it?
Not here yet. The super chat this month, we're doing it for a while right now. It's the American Stroke Association, and people that might know my story, my dad had a stroke December 30th and is struggling still pretty bad. So we're giving all super chats to the American Stroke Association. So that's where we'll go probably till he gets out of the hospital. He's been in the hospital for 2 months, and it's going to be a little while longer. So
well, for $50
Sarge out there. Sarge has the link if you want your check your email, Sarge. If you want to jump in, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah. So
what were you going to say, Mike?
Yeah, I was going to say for $50 in the super chat, I'll break out some 1980 breakdancing moves. You know,
really now?
Bring the robot. I'll bring the robot back.
That ain't breakdancing, man.
That's popping, but I will break dance for $50.
All right. There you go. There you go. All right. And from Texas, once again, I've just given up, people. I've tried to give him the wrong link. I've tried to tell him the wrong day, the wrong time. Somehow this guy just keeps showing up. The tactical leprechaun himself. What's up, Clover?
Yeah, a long time no talk to, huh?
Yeah, about what, half an hour?
Yep.
Yeah, if you guys haven't checked it out on both of our channels, and then on Instagram and on Full 30 and Facebook and GunStreamer, obviously, Clover and I both did a video together that we're out there pushing the 2A batch. Good Lord, the 2A patch batch. It's tough to say, and it's been funded, but we obviously have till midnight tomorrow night. So what we're doing is there's a couple free giveaways. One of them is going to be for people that have already contributed to the fund, and that's going to be the Meal Team 6 patch set. And if you haven't seen those guys yet, there's some awesome patches. And then the second one is obviously for anyone, whether you contributed or not, it's a free set of the actual patch batch. And this is going towards 2A projects. Myself and Clover in on it. Every Second Matters, the Pew Pew Jew, Florida Carry, GunTube, GunStreamer, Yankee Marshall, Never Enough Ammo, Tony Simon with the 2As for everyone. And am I missing someone, Clover? I can't remember. I think I might have said everybody. But
I was muted there. Yeah, I think you covered everybody. If we did, we're sorry.
Yeah, we're sorry. And what this is going to do is basically help get all these projects patches for different things. We're not getting any money. It's not funding our projects itself. It's to help us get some patches. So go check that out. We've got about 24 hours, a little more than 24 hours left in this thing. It's already been fully funded. So thank you to everybody who has contributed. A little over $11,000 has been raised in the last 17 days, which is quite amazing. To get everyone patches and a numbered set and certificate of authenticity. And then all the projects are going to get like 100 different patches for their own personal use. So thank you for everyone that does that. And if you haven't, go check out our video and our Instagram post, because there is a way that you can get some free stuff. You want to talk about anything about that real quick, Clover?
No, not right now.
Okay, there you go. All right, so tonight we're going to discuss, the topic is going to be how to have a gun debate, whether it's with an anti-gunner or if it's within our own ranks. And I think we've seen over the last couple months, tensions have been high. There have been a lot of legislation out there that is questionable, somewhat scary. Obviously, the House has the numbers right now, so they're pushing through a lot of gun control stuff right now that are going to be sent to the Senate for review and their vote. And the problem that I'm having is not just on the anti-gunner side. I've witnessed a couple different discussions, if you want to call them that, at gun shops or just out in public. And sorry, I got distracted by something. But these can get animated, to say the least. These can also get hostile, which is not what we want necessarily, or is it? We'll discuss that, but also within our own ranks, our own people that we are at least on the same side of the Second Amendment with. We might not always agree with every issue, but you know, there have been a lot of people talking in the last couple of months, and you see arguments and you see people fighting, and there are these wars and battles, especially within content creators, going back and forth, and how we're going to talk about how that might reflect on us as a community to the outside and all that. So we're going to talk about that real quick. And what I want to do is kind of once again, thank you everybody who's thumbing it up. We already have a thumb down, which is great. I love that. Thank you so much for thumbing it down. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming and watching. You got to watch before you can thumb it down. So thanks for that. But I want to kind of run through the discussion panel real quick, and I'll bring Skip back in real quick and say, in the last couple of months, have you witnessed or seen any kind of debates or discussions either within our own ranks or with an anti-gunner?
I have seen a lot of debates, and I've noticed that a lot of people cannot have a civilized conversation nowadays. It normally ends to where everyone's very upset, and I try to keep, I know there's a certain part of it to where you do have emotions that are tied to it, but I try to keep my emotions in check. And once the situation gets there, sometimes you just need to take a time out and agree to disagree, and maybe we can re-engage these conversations later.
That's a great point. And yeah, they can get nasty. They can get emotional. And that's something that we have to think about when we're having these debates. I want to bring in real quick Sandhills, and after we kind of introduce everybody and have your initial thoughts, and we'll just kind of an open forum chat real quick and bring out different ideas. But I want to bring Sandy in real quick, because last week you had a discussion that I enjoyed, and it was different terminology. So is the terminology that people use, is that something that gets on your nerves every now and then?
Yeah. I mean, it's no secret, I'm the resident grumpy old man, or self-proclaimed grumpy old man around here. But yeah, a lot of things get on my nerves. And one of the ones that does it quickest is some of the terminology and just name calling in general. I don't know. Sometimes, yeah, I'm guilty too. Sometimes I do use a name or a term for a group of people, but I'm never going to single somebody out and try and just call them a name and attack them if I'm trying to get my point across and get them to agree with me, or at least see where I'm coming from. It just doesn't seem to me like that's the way to start.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think a lot of it is the initial attack. And I mean not the attack, but the initial wording and how you start a debate or have a discussion. If you start in the proper way, then possibly it goes well the rest of the way. I want to bring in Budget real quick, and Budget had a show last Friday that me and another guy kind of got into it a little bit, and I think it was, we all left friends and all that, but you can talk about a subject that we're passionate about, and sometimes it can escalate quickly. What do you say when people start escalating conversations like we had, like I had, and I apologize if it upset you the other night,
Okay.
but if that happens around you in a normal situation, not on a show, what's some of the things that you can do to stop that, or do you let it go?
Well, I try to assume that everybody involved in a conversation are adults and don't really need my intervention until they need my intervention. If that makes any sense. It's just that, I think that we need to remember that we're on the same side here by and large. We all have the same goals. We may want to approach achieving those goals differently, but I think that, at least in our own community, it's pretty much the same. I wish that some people in some other recent discussions, like most notably the one that was on your live stream, would have remembered that.
Right. Yeah. I understand. I want to bring in Mike real quick, and Mike's got something that he's giving instructions. He's giving classes all the time, and I'm bringing Skip in if you want to comment on this as an instructor as well. But how many of your students are new to firearms, and what kind of discussion do you have? Obviously they're open to firearms when they come to classes, or they wouldn't be coming, but do you try to have a certain discussion with newcomers to the community, Mike?
Yes, in more ways than one. So basically I give like a history lesson associated with some of the laws. For instance, we know you can't carry your firearms into a federal building, right? By you not being able to carry your firearms into a federal building, where did that stem from? Where did that start? So that's one of the things I talk about in the class. But at the same time, a lot of people are fueled by what's going on in the media. You know what I'm saying? So media projects certain things, certain ways. Crime also brings in a lot of people. But in the same essence, when you turn around and you look at it in one perspective, why are you really coming to get a gun? Everybody's or get the training. Everybody's response is always to protect themselves. You know what I'm saying? But
Right.
in the essence of how many of us are really in that position where we think that 1% chance might happen, might not happen, so it's a way how you look at it, but it's also in how you carry yourself a lot of the times too,
Right.
so, but then it also goes back into a history lesson as well. So do you understand without the Second Amendment, you don't have the First Amendment, you don't have the Third Amendment, you also don't have the Fifth Amendment. So the Second Amendment complements every other amendment that's on there for you to live as you should in America by the forefathers.
That's a great point. And I want to bring Clover in real quick. And from a creator standpoint, that we all see a lot of infighting from channel to channel and calling people out. And I think that calling people out in a certain sense is good if you're calling them out to kind of bring them back to where they were, or what their mission should be. But we see a lot of people calling each other out for not being activists and all that. Let me ask you a question. Is it important to you for creators to be activists, or is it okay just to be an entertainer?
I don't know. I mean, I can't really answer that question that way.
Okay.
But I will. I'll answer it the best way I can.
Yeah, sure.
I don't believe that we're charged with being activists because we're creators. I do believe that we have a responsibility to not only our audience, but also the freedom that allows us to be in the niche that we're in. We have the responsibility to, at the very least, be advocates, because I believe that an advocate is like one step below an activist. An advocate can advocate for the Second Amendment, advocate for the lifestyle, the pew pew life, the FUD life, whatever your turn of phrase may be, without doing things. I see an activist as somebody that is publicly out there. They're going to these political meetings. They're going to the 2A organizational meetings. They're going to these rallies, and they're in the forefront. Let's say Yehuda Reamer, right? He's an activist. Cheryl Todd, an activist. Maj, KD. They fall, in my mind, into that activist category. I see myself as more of an advocate. I'm not necessarily out there in that capacity as much. I'm not afraid to talk about it. I don't shy away from talking about it and having the conversations. But at the same time, I focus more on the advocacy side and the awareness. So I think that there can be a happy medium. We obviously, I've said it all along, there's a progression with people. They may start a channel just for something to do, just because they enjoy maybe shooting certain types of firearms, or they enjoy certain styles of firearms, or something like that. And they may be fairly new to the game. They may be documenting their journey, or who knows, right? And they end up becoming advocates over time, and then eventually they go full blown activist with it in the end. So it can be, for some, it can be a progression. For some, they kind of stay in their own little in their own little bubble there, and they never really grow outside that. And I don't, like I said, once you get to that advocate level, I don't think it's absolutely necessary. If there was a shortage of activists, then maybe, but at this point, I don't believe there's a shortage of activists. I believe that there's enough. There's a shortage of advocates that the activists can point to and say, this is who we represent, right? There's not enough of the individual standing up at this point.
And that's a great point. If anybody else wants to jump in, feel free to jump in. But I want to touch on this for just a second, and we'll go to maybe Sandy looks like he wanted to say something. But I think that makes a great point, because I think G-Webs, those type of people are activists. Like you said, Maj, KD, Cheryl, Yuda. I mean, all these people are phenomenal what they do, and they're out there trying to spread the word of Second Amendment. And I think that people understand that people can be just gun people, and they like talking guns. And that doesn't mean that they're not for the Second Amendment, because they're not actually out there doing activism. We need to have a discussion just about guns. Keeping up the discussion about guns is part of being an activist. So I agree with what you say, that people can be in it for entertainment. They can be advocates, and they can be activists. And some people are all of those. And that's great. You have a lot of people that wear a lot of different hats. Sandy, you were going to say something earlier?
You're muted, if I can get my mute button. There we go. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit last Tuesday night on 2A Tuesday. And I definitely see where Clover's coming from. But, one of the viewpoints that myself and a couple others shared on 2A Tuesday was, everybody who has a channel and is doing, producing videos or doing live chats or both, if you are actively talking to your lawmakers, whether they're federal or state or local, if you're doing things to help promote awareness, to help promote education, you're actively helping promote our cause. I think that you can claim to be an activist, or you can say that those people are in their own way an activist. They're not doing things that, that the folks that Clover just named off, they're not doing the same things. But I think that we're all active in our way, along with being advocates, of course.
I'll agree with that. With where I was coming from was more of the outward sense on your channel, the videos you make, that sort of thing. You've got channels and things out there, and then you've got people like me. Yes, I've talked to my congressman. I meet them face to face. I shake their hand. I'm active in local organizations and other things, but that's not. I don't put that on my channel. I don't make videos about all of that stuff. So to somebody, they may say, "Well, he's just a FUD," or he doesn't do nothing for the Second Amendment. Which that's not true, because I participate in stuff like this, obviously. But if I didn't ever have that public talk about 2A, then I could see where you could get that stigma as a channel. Let's take it off of me and put it onto somebody else, like Demo or Hickok or whoever. And just keep in mind that those people have personal lives, and they could be doing things behind the scenes, doing things in their community or in their state or whatever, and they just don't publicize that stuff. Whether that's good or bad, I think it's a double-edged sword a lot of times, and especially if you're a bigger channel, you probably weigh that out. So you do things behind the scenes, and you just don't make that a part of your online persona, so to speak.
Right. Now, Al W. out there makes a good point. He says one of the biggest issues is activists looking down on advocates, saying that they're anti-2A. If they're not doing this, then they're automatically this.
Or FUDs.
They're FUDs, and they're FUDs, and I hate that term.
But let me warn you of something out there. When you say that, I get the premise behind that. But here's the thing. Are those people that are quote unquote activists that are looking down and slurring their own, are they really activists at that point? Because I don't really know. I think they maybe want to be basement dweller, think they're activists, but I don't really know that a lot of those people that do that are actually activists.
Well, I think to a certain extent, and anyone's feel free to jump in, but I think one of the biggest problems that we have is we have people that need to understand that life is not all about guns. I'm as big of a gun nut and preach the gospel of concealed carry and carry every single day, everywhere I go that I legally can. And it is a large, huge part of my life, but it is not the only thing in my life. I have a family, I have a job, I have friends, I coach high school sports for the high school. I do all this other different stuff that is a part of my life. But there are people that can get too consumed with the fight and not see that reality out there is just because someone isn't as dedicated and die hard and spend every waking second that you do doesn't mean they're any less ready to fight. And when I'm not saying fight, I'm not saying Civil War fight. We'll talk about the Civil War crap here in a little bit. But just because they're not 24/7 really focusing on the two-way doesn't mean that they don't care. It's just, you know, I'm 44 years old. I'm a little different than someone and I've got a 21-year-old kid, and she's going to school and becoming and working at nurse. Like I said, life is all of this stuff. And if you focus on one little part of your life and give it maximum exposure, you're going to get burned out. And I do agree that there are people out there that will say that you're anti 2A or you're not doing your part if you're not talking 24/7. And I think that sometimes hurts us because they can get a little riled up sometimes, and they don't really necessarily have that flip the switch button to talk calmly. It's all or nothing, and I'm all in and all of that. So yeah, I do agree that reality needs to come into a little bit of this.
Can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
So I think that it's really important for us in the 2A community to remember that there's all types of outsiders that are looking at us. And I want people to really see how I'm just like them. So they don't know necessarily that I have kids, that I have a husband, that I have a full-time job. But I really pride myself on showing people that other side of me so that they can see I'm just like you. And my why is my kids, and other people's why will probably be their kids as well. But it just shows them that my life does not revolve around guns. My life revolves around my family. I'm still a normal person, but I've been able to incorporate firearms and personal protection into my life just because the real nitty-gritty of it is there's just bad people out there that want to do bad things, and I'm prepared for them.
And that's a great point, because a lot of people get into the gun life or the guns lifestyle or the concealed carry life because of their family. They may not have grown up shooting guns, but they want to be able to protect themselves and their family. And that's how they get into guns. And so that's so important to understand that everyone has a different reason as to why they're in this community. And just because we don't have the same backgrounds or have the same passions doesn't mean that we're not on the same team. And I want to address a comment out there that was talking about what they consider a FUD. And I have a big problem with the word FUD, and I understand why people use that term. I understand the context as to where they use the term FUD. But once again, we're talking about degrading someone who's in our community. They may not be the activist. They may not even be an advocate. They seriously might only like guns for 3 months of the year while it's hunting season. But they're still in our community. They're still gun owners. They're not anti-gun, you know. So that's why
turn of phrase. But that turn of phrase gets used wrong, the same as we get our panties all in a bunch when somebody says assault weapon, you know, and we get our panties in a bunch. Or somebody says clip instead of magazine, and we get our panties in a bunch. Well, I'm getting my panties in a bunch because y'all don't understand what FUD means. Go look it up. Look up Fuddy Dud. Look up Fuddery. FUD with 1D, FUD with 2. Look up the history. It stems all the way back to the mid 1800s. There's definitions for words. Go look all that up. And that's where Elmer Fudd come from. That's why his name is because he fit the mold of those definitions. And it's not an anti-Second Amendment person. And that's the point. So FUD life for me, because I don't mind calling somebody a FUD, because FUDs can be saved. You know,
if you're not using it in a derogatory way.
The people, well, and because I believe that people have it all wrong when it's FUD, and a FUD can be saved. You know, the person that's out there that's actively against the Second Amendment is actively against the freaking Second Amendment. There's no FUD to it.
Right. I want to bring up a couple comments, and one of them was and I can't remember who it was. I apologize, but someone asked, how much activism do you have to do to be an activist? And I think Clover said that's hard to quantify that. And I think it is, you know, there's no set dialogue. And that's the problem, is people think that you have to do certain things to be considered activists. And if you're not, they talk down to you about that. And then we're talking about that in our own community. So I think that having a healthy discussion, is okay to disagree. It's okay to come from different angles. I play devil's advocate quite a bit on other people's shows, sometimes without them even knowing it, just to have a discussion. And after the show, I'll even keep going with it. I mean, I'll play it all the way through and still have people that dislike me because they think that I was serious. But having a discussion is healthy, because if we're going to talk with anti-gunners in public, then we need to be able to discuss all the topics from 360 degrees around that topic and understand where they're coming from. Because, you know, the last thing we want to do is insult them, degrade them, and yell at them because they don't agree with us, because at that point, they're done. No matter what you could do, you're not going to change their mind, and you're not going to plant a seed for later thought. They're done. So we need to have a discussion within ourselves before we can have a discussion with other people. If we can't master it within ourselves, then we sure as hell don't need to be having that discussion with other people. Yeah, go ahead, Budget.
Just absolutely right there. I was just thinking that I'm watching out in the chat that who was it? Gary said, we don't need labels, we need unity and dedication. And that is the truth. And by resorting to name calling, especially within our ranks, but even with the anti-gunners, you know, by being derogatory, we're not helping our cause. You know, it's one thing to make an argument using reason and logic and facts. It's quite another to be derogatory and use shaming and use tactics like that, because we do not do our cause any service whatsoever by being negative like that. We don't do it. All we do is drive people away, whether they were in our camp and want to defect and say, well, if that's how you're going to be, I don't want any part of it, or whether they're the people sitting on the sidelines watching this. We're certainly not going to draw them to our position by being jerks. You know, we have to keep this in mind. You know, we're not just talking to the people we're talking to. We're also talking to the people that are listening and the people that are watching, and we need to be cognizant of that all the time.
Yes, even when we're talking to each other.
That's right.
Eyes and
especially when we're talking to each other.
Yes,
especially
when we're doing it, and when we're doing it on here. You've got eyes and ears that are outside the tent and outside the fold. So are you portraying a message in a way that's welcoming to somebody that is trying to learn, that's trying to understand, that is somebody that is open-minded, right? Or are you turning them away?
I've mentioned this on several videos, other chats, that we're doing their job for them. A lot of these anti-gunners think that we're just hillbilly crazies that like to shoot our guns and are crazy. And the way that they were to come into some of these chats or watch some of the Instagram posts and all of that, we're doing their job for them, guys. They don't have to do their homework. They don't have to get creative with memes. We're giving them the memes. That's the scary thing. There's a question out there that I want to address to the panel and see what you guys think. Philo out there says, we have many gun owners who want more gun laws and bans in his area. What do you do with people like that? Anybody have any suggestions?
In his area, that may be a difficult task. I mean, the answer to that is really simple. I mean, it's education. But, you know, we've got to learn how to talk and to people. And when you're dealing with people in different sections of the country, again, I go back to those activists we got and how they're really good at certain things. You've got the women, you've got Skip, and you've got Carrie, and you've got Cheryl, you know, and they're really good at talking to that, you know, female demographic. And you got Moz, and you've got KD, and they're really good at talking to that inner city demographic. And, you know, where's that person that is, you know, good at talking to the California, you know, the Valley Girl or the Surfer Dude or the whatever demographic out there? Where's our activists for that? We haven't found one yet. I can't do it. I'm too Texas. I'm too country. I can't do that. I can help someone, but I can't do it. I don't speak that language. So that's the issue with bringing more people in. As we open up and we bring more people in and we can educate more people, right? Those people then can go out. Because I've said this all along. All it takes is reaching one person. You reach the right person, right? What if you reach the next Moz, or you reach the next Skip, or you reach the next Carrie, and you've reached them and you've opened their mind, right? And then they have the power, and they have the articulation, and they have the voice, and they have the motivation and everything that's required to then go around and change thousands of minds. And it started with you. It started with you.
Yep. Skip, what were you were going to say something earlier, I think, weren't you?
Yeah. So I wanted to add, I went to the PodFest Expo in Orlando, and it was podcasters from all over the world, not just the US, from the world. And I had conversations. Of course, people were going to, oh, what's your podcast about? You know? And I'm like, oh, funny that you asked, because between me and Ken, we were the only people there from the gun world. So we were the minority. And when people talk to me, I didn't say, oh, I'm trying to get everyone to get a gun. It's, hey, my podcast is educating people on the Second Amendment, self-protection, and firearm safety. And I made sure that I wasn't, and I'm just not a real aggressive person as it is, but I met people from California. I met people from Australia, and we had civilized conversations. And when we left, it was, I really see it from a different perspective. And wow, why are you not in California? Can you recommend someone in California that can teach me? Because I'm really intrigued. And I call that a win in my book. So even if I didn't connect with anyone else at that expo, as far as me doing anything with podcasts, I was able to educate people on the Second Amendment and how there's just so many different people that are out in the community that are doing great things. And we all look different. We all bring different skills to the community. And we had civilized conversations. And I had people that asked me, well, why do you need to own an AR? And why do you need to this? And we talked about it, and we respected each other. I didn't interrupt them when they were speaking. It's okay, you get everything you have to say out, and then I'll say what I have to say. And I was very overwhelmed at the fact that regardless of where everyone came from, every single person that I talked to, they respected where I came from, and they just told me how much they appreciated what I was doing for the Second Amendment community.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I heard something that kind of enlightened me a few days ago. And we were talking about, someone was talking about, maybe in G-West, talking about the new media and firearms media, 2A media. And if we take those down and we talk about podcasting, content creators doing videos, writing blogs, doing, reviews on Gear Report, all of that stuff, there are a lot of these people hide behind that they're journalists, that they put out these stories about how many gun deaths in their area, and they quote all of these erroneous facts, and they hide behind their journalism thing. We're journalists as well. And the first thing that we all need to realize that is we are the pro-gun journalists. They're not going to have it on Fox. They're not going to have it on CNN. We as a group need to start looking at ourselves as we're journalism covering the Second Amendment. And I think if we start doing that and having questions and answers like Skip did about with people that everyone else there was anti-gun, but once they realize that we're not crazy, we look just like you, we act just like you, we're at the same soccer games as you are. It's just we have a passion that you might have a passion about makeup. We have a passion to protect ourselves. And if we can find common ground, I think that's really important. Mike, what you got?
I was going to say that when you sit there and you look at it overall, everybody has interest. Not everybody really truly understands the importance of laws and the people who are making the laws. So when you're talking to somebody and if something doesn't make sense to you, or like I said, they're just talking and you don't believe them, start asking a bunch of questions. And, of course, if you're talking to somebody and they say gun control or whatever, okay, what is gun control? Have them break it down to you. And if they can't feasibly do it, then if you know the answer, educate them or point them in the right direction, whereas they can get the correct answer. So that will cut out all the jibber jabber. The other point of it is, and you made this point a couple weeks ago. It was a personal conversation. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So the point was, we need to mend together in the gun community. All right. And what the problem is, yeah, everybody wants to be, and I won't say the man, but everybody wants to be that top figure. All right. So everybody needs to understand that everybody can't be the top dog. All right. So you have to play your position. And a lot of people don't understand their position because a lot of people are chasing down that notoriety, as you said earlier, like in that previous conversation. But I think once people understand, like, for instance, this is your show. I don't talk too much on your show, but I'm active in the chats. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm playing my position on your platform. Now, if this was my show, it would be reverse. And I would expect that same. You know what I'm saying? So it's the same thing in the gun community, right? Everybody that's a citizen can be a part of the gun community. All right. A lot of people are not interested in the laws until it affects them. Right. And then that's when a lot of people get active in it. Just like if somebody breaks into your house. Now you're going to be a little bit more apt to protect yourself and your property and what you have to do to keep your livelihood intact.
Absolutely. Skip, you wanted to jump back in?
Yeah, so I wanted to add, I was talking to a lady and she's like, why do we need guns? Like, I don't know why people would carry a gun here. So for me to go to that conference, I traveled an hour and a half away from my house and I drove back and forth every day. And I was going back home around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So it was putting me getting home pretty late. And of course, I had my gun with me throughout the conference. Although I didn't announce it, my gun was on my body. There was nothing stopping someone from walking into that hotel and shooting. So when we were sitting in the lobby one night and we were talking, and she goes like, why would someone at a conference like this need a gun? So I asked her, so I didn't announce that I had a gun on me, but I go, well, why wouldn't they? And she's like, I mean, you're perfectly safe. So I posed the situation of, what if someone were to walk through that door right now with a gun? What would you do? And she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, I can tell you what I would do. And she's like, well, you would be able to have a gun, So it was something like that she said she goes to conferences all the time and never thought about it. But I didn't say, well, you sound stupid, or, I didn't say anything like that. I just educated her on a scenario that was very likely. That scenario can happen to anyone, anywhere. And then something else that I want to add, I wanted to kind of go off of what Mike just said. I'm a firm believer that not everyone is for everyone. So people that follow Ghost may not like my approach. People that follow Mike may not like my approach. So I find I really struggle when people really want to be that one head person. There's not that one head person out there for this community because there's so many different styles of people in the community. So my style is not for everyone, and I know it. But there may be people who like my style and they like Ghost's style and they follow us both. And I love when people can take, and I do it myself in my life. I take a little bit from here, I take a little bit from there, and then I just grow as a person. But there's so many people who don't understand that not everything is for everyone and not everyone is for everyone. Some people's approach may be very abrasive, and that's not really good for that new gun owner, or just some people just don't like people who may be really full of themselves. So we can all support each other and we can all be the head of our people who follow us. But to the surface, we need to show that we all support each other. Like, Go send me the link. Of course, I'm going to join and I'm going to provide my perspective on his channel. But I think we just need to kind of get away from that mentality, because there's not that one person. Because if it was that one person, I think the community would be a lot smaller, because not everybody's going to fit that person.
That's a great point, and I think that is probably the key, is empathy towards other people's thoughts. whether it's an anti-gunner or within our own. Old 60 Armory out there brings up a great point. It was tagging CloverTech, but I'm going to go ahead and read this, and says, I'll let CloverTech answer first since it was actually asked to him. But it says, can you change someone's beliefs? It's not a war about guns, it's a war on beliefs. The issue is the anti-gunners are trying to force their beliefs on other people, and that is the real problem. And that's a great question, a great statement. Is this more about beliefs instead of the actual gun itself? I'm gonna let Clover bring that up first, since it was a tag to him.
It is. It's a culmination of things. It's a culmination of, and I guess you could call it a belief. So I'm not gonna disagree with that premise. But it's a culmination of quite a few things. It's a culmination of someone's experiences, life experiences, exposure to the slogans, exposure to data, whether that's correct or incorrect, and how all of that ties into their life experiences. And then when you get into a situation like that, yes, you start to develop a belief. And then you've got those that are just blind followers, and you have that with anything when you're talking about any type of a belief. You've got people that blindly follow. But the question is, can you change those people? Well, yeah, of course you can, because if it's not rooted in the truth and in fact, then yeah, I mean, there's an opportunity there for that person to realize, right, that they've been worshiping a false god, let's say, since we're putting that in the terms of a belief. So yeah, I mean, there is that opportunity. And what we have to look at is, we talk a lot about the anti-gun element, the anti-gunners. The anti-gunners are a very, very, very small segment. As far as the anti-gunners whose minds will never be changed, there's people that have been bamboozled by the anti-gunners, and we may view them as anti-gunners, but guess what? They're not. And we have to be able to recognize that. And that's where conversations come into play, and getting to know people and try to understand where they're coming from, because it was said out in the chat earlier, and it ties directly into what we're talking about here. It was talking about emotion. Okay. Whether we want to admit it or not, emotion is a real thing. When I get emotional, it's real. It's not some fake thing that the black magic or something. It's a real thing, and it has to be dealt with, unfortunately. So we have to be able to deal with somebody. Somebody may have legitimate emotions, right? Somebody in their family has been some type of victim of violence, or, God forbid, suicide a lot of times will bring this on. And, we have to address that, and we have to understand that those emotions are real. And we have to understand that. We have to be, I think, with you talking about empathy and being empathetic, I think we do have to be that way. And then we have to start to try to move into a direction to sort of make them understand that, the emotional side of it, what you're dealing with, when you're talking to somebody, what you're dealing with as far as these emotions are real. I understand. I empathize with it, and I can see exactly how that puts you in the situation of thinking that you're in. But let's look at your neighbor next door that hasn't had that experience, and how, this relates to them. And then you start opening up and moving that conversation from, once you validated that, and you haven't went in going, well, you're just emotional, you're running on emotions. You go in, you validate that, because it may be real. So validate it if it's real, and then move the conversation into a logical direction from there.
Yep. I want to bring Budge in. He's been kind of quiet. And do you have anything that you want to add on the topics that we've talked about, or anything else you want to bring up real quick?
Other than to reiterate what I think Skip was saying about, it takes a lot of different personalities to, I don't necessarily want to say lead, but it takes a lot of different personalities to reach different people. One of the things that comes up in our circles right now is Hickok 45. People are angry with him because, he's like the king of the FUDs, and he doesn't really support the Second Amendment and whatnot. But you know what? We need people like him. You mentioned earlier about, is it okay for someone just to be an entertainer? I would say yes, it absolutely is okay for someone just to be an entertainer, because we need those people as sort of the gateway drug, so to speak, towards hardcore Second Amendment activism. You know, they'll draw somebody in because they're fun. They'll draw somebody in because they're personable. They have the charisma. People like them. You know, they remind them of their granddad or their dad or whatever. You know, we need the demolition ranches, as much as I hate to say it. Because
you better watch out. Clover might do something to you on that one.
Clover might take offense to that, but I think it's valid. We need people like that because they're entertaining and they bring people in who then find other people who are more advocates, and then find other people who may be the activist, and they because they watched that Demolition Ranch video or that Hickok 45 video, they might end up being the next Mash Toray. You never know.
Yep.
That's a great point, because like you said, as much as we like to make fun of Demo Ranch and some of these other, Braden, these type of people.
I was going to say, we need Fish Break.
We need Fish Break, for whatever reason, people do find their videos entertaining. But like you said, they could bring them in. People like blowing stuff up, and it's kind of that Hollywood style mentality, and let's shock and awe them and bring them in. And then maybe they catch a video of an advocate and talking, concealed carry and talking self-protection and what kind of gun is good for the truck or whatever. And then the next video they read is, now we need your help. Now we need you to get to your courthouses, to your state capitals, write your congressman. So the natural evolution of someone who was never involved in the community, it may need to go through that entertainment, then advocacy, then activism. And that's not a bad thing, as long as we get them on our side at whatever level they want to. I'm okay with that. I want to bring up
how they get here, as long as they get here.
Exactly. I want to bring in Sandy real quick. I want to bring up something that A&A was talking about, that the other side seems to have mastered propaganda, and they seem to have, or I'm sorry, maybe it was Guitar Man Pete that brought it up. I'm sorry. It was Guitar Man Pete that said they've mastered the propaganda side, and that maybe we aren't as fluid as that. Is there something that we can do, or not necessarily us, but our community, besides the NRA, the GOA, and the FPC, and these different organizations? Is there something else that we could do on a daily basis to help the propaganda?
Well, I think maybe I have a wrong definition in my mind of propaganda, but propaganda to me means something that isn't necessarily true. That's a lot of the time it's just the government or the typical news stations, whatever, trying to feed you misinformation and shape your opinion based on a version of the truth that's not complete or what have you. So we don't want to master propaganda. What we want to master is facts and the whole truth and nothing but the truth, right? So I think that's kind of maybe how we combat that a little bit. The problem is that I have seen here this last 3 or 4 years that I've really kind of been paying more attention. Facts and truth don't seem to have that cool factor, that sexy factor as emotion and some of the propaganda and things like that. So it's a lot easier to gain traction when you are, those big news organizations or whoever it is that is trying to, leave out certain inconvenient parts and just try and shape public opinion that way. It feels kind of like an uphill battle a little bit, but I don't know a different way. Does anybody else?
Yeah, and this kind of goes into a question that was posed out there that says, how do we feel about entertainers and the entertaining side? And I'll say this publicly: I think we need them. I think that we said before, we need them maybe to bring some people in. But here's a side of me that I wish that they would help with more. Let's say a Demo Ranch has got millions and millions of people that religiously follow the channel, and he has chosen not to be an activist. That's okay. We don't need him to be an activist. But I wish what he could do is, when there is something going on, whether it's a rally or a bump stock ban or something that we as a community as a whole need to get behind, I would like to think that those channels or the entertainers would at least, acknowledge that there is some stuff going on, maybe do a 2-minute video or mention it somewhere in Instagram post that will at least get the message out to a lot of people that actually care about what they say. Not saying they have to become activists, but sharing information with people to a wide variety of people in an audience could really help down the line. So I have no problem with the entertainers. I don't necessarily personally care for them, but I understand why they're important. I just wish sometimes in specific situations that they could help the cause just by putting a video or an Instagram post or something like that. That's kind of where I'm at with that.
That's kind of one of my biggest irks too, is we've got these channels that have, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes even in the millions of subscribers and viewers. And, how hard would it be for them to make a 30-second video, or just at the end of their videos, just say, hey, this is going on. Just check with your laws and see what's happening around you. Be aware. How hard would that be? I'm a tiny little channel, and we haven't had one of our 2A Tuesdays get over 300 views yet, even on replay. Nothing's gotten up to 300 yet. And when you've got somebody that you put out a video and within 24 hours you've got thousands of views on it, it seems to me like a waste of potential. I guess that's what I would say. Just a waste of potential on being able to reach people and say, hey, there's some stuff going on that maybe you guys should be aware of. And I don't have, I'm not covering it on my channel, but maybe here's somebody that does, or talk. Just go look at your laws. Go talk to your lawmakers.
Absolutely. Skip, what you got?
I feel the same way, pretty much as all you guys on that. I've noticed looking at entertainers, their channels are normally bigger than all of our channels, sometimes almost put together, right? They have the eyes of a lot of people, and I've seen where people are not being very safe. And when you have the eyes of the younger crowd, they're going to think that that's the right way to do things, and that's not necessarily the right way to do things. But once you have them hooked as an entertainer, why not feature someone in that community, because they're obviously drawn to that community. So feature someone, help other people within that community out, because you obviously have that bigger platform. And if you're about that to a community, let's educate people and not just entertain them. But I kind of went on like a mini rant on my channel, on my page the other day, about people wanting to be entertained and not educated. And I can get that you want to see fun stuff, but all of that Gucci nice stuff, that's nice, but do you know the basics when it comes to your CCW laws? Do you know the basics when it comes to these guns? And a lot of people don't know the basics, but they want to be at that advanced level and they're not ready for it.
That's a great point. Mike, you've got your hand raised over here. What's up?
Yeah, Skip hit it right at the end of her point, whereas people want to be entertained instead of educated. So I was going to say, like, if you look at a lot of people who are entertainers in the gun community, look at the video, study the video, and look at how they are shooting or how they are practicing safe acts, right? And that's one indicator that shows that they are entertainers. Now, there are a lot of entertainers out there that can shoot and properly display the right techniques and everything. But in all essence, when you look at it overall, what needs to take place is, if they're entertainers, just like Skip suggested, bring in the gun person to teach it or show it from a safe perspective, so it's from a valid position of thought.
I really like that idea. And there's a snob out there that says, so it's simple, educate through entertainment. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's something that we can all think about is even though we don't necessarily want to be entertainers, if you have entertaining things and you present a topic in an entertaining way, sometimes maybe that does help us. Maybe that's something we all, including myself, need to think about every now and then. If we're going to put a post out there, or if we're going to put a video out there about a 2A thing, it can't always be in your face, war face topics or presented that way. Maybe a more fun, enlightening way could bring in more people. That's a really good point. And then also Cycle Camp or Tony, I can't remember when it was, said that memes are the new propaganda. And that's a great point as well. That's the propaganda posters of World War II is when I think of when propaganda, and that's what memes are. And so, they're very effective. They're very effective. Instagram and the gun community can be very effective because you don't have to watch a 5-10 minute video. You can just look at a picture and make your point very, very quickly. I know, Clover, you had something you wanted to say. I'm bringing you in.
Yeah, I want to talk about or respond to this whole creator thing that we're talking about. First of all, with the notion that if these bigger creators would just shout out the smaller creators or talk about the projects to the smaller creators, and okay, there's an issue there. And that issue spans across every single solitary niche you could possibly imagine. There's not one that's exempt. That just really doesn't ever happen unless you're talking about a larger channel that there's some type of an intrinsic tie somewhere that are lightning strikes, quite literally. The other aspect of that, and it plays to that as well, is when we say, well, they could just make a small video, or they could mention about a rally, or mention this or mention that. You got to realize we're already talking about entertainment channels for the most part when we talk about that. So we're talking about an entirely different demographic. We're talking about people in a completely different place in life than a lot of those that we're reaching now. It's not the same people that we've got now, the same demographic of people, and they've got more of them. That's not what it is. And with a channel like Demo, I can tell you without a doubt, he's got a huge like kid following, like under 18. That's useless to us in most aspects. If we're talking about Second Amendment and rally and stuff like that. And with a lot of the channels and the language and the other things that goes on, especially with some of the new YouTube guidelines, could even get more stickier. So I think that it's important to maybe step back, and part of this is playing devil's advocate, is to step back a little bit when we start wanting those larger channels to do more than what they do, which is provide a gateway. Just like Hollywood, just like movies, just like TV, just like video games, bring people into the firearm, get people started on their journey into firearms and stuff like that. That's basically what they're doing, their gateway. And so their demographic is different. And I think we got to realize that. And another thing, especially in the day and age of YouTube and nobody gets notifications, even if you click the bell and all of this other stuff, how many are they actually reaching even at that? So, I think when you step back and you really, really look at it, I don't think that would make as big of a difference as what a lot of people seem to think that it might.
I want to bring Mike in real quick. Go ahead, Mike. Can you want to comment on that?
Only thing I said is in the side chat was, children, even when you look at kids that are, 15 to 18, those are the ones you really want to have the impact on how important 2A rights are. So even though they are kids and they can't vote or whatever the case may be, those minds are moldable to the point where they can be presented the importance of their livelihood and their children's livelihood. So we have to keep pushing it forth, and it has to start with the kids. So
no, I agree. I mean, I think, and there's some talk about that even out in the chat, and I agree with that. I agree with that younger demographic, but is with everybody out there, with everybody on the panel, with everybody that's out there in the chat that has a channel, is your channel at all tailored to try to bring in those kind of kids? Is it pointed to that type of demographic? Are you going to be effective in holding their attention long enough? Because Demo and Hickok and whoever may be able to do that, particularly Demo with blowing stuff up or whatever, are you going to be able to hold their attention long enough and tailor all of that in such a way where you then can teach them about 2A? That's the question.
Yep.
I get it.
I do find that with me, I try to stay away from the entertaining aspect of it. And I always want to come off as I take the issues, as I take it serious because every day someone is finding me for the first time. And when I first started, there was a meme that I posted about group therapy, and it was a target, and there was someone who had been affected by gun violence and said that she would never support me. Like, first time someone had shared a meme and she got a hold of my channel, she just said she wasn't going to support me because I don't take it serious. And so I looked at that as every single day someone is coming across me for the first time, and I want to make sure that they know that I take this serious. And I do try to find fun ways to throw my personality in there every now and then. But, you know, it could be a live that someone is coming in on and I make a joke and they just catch it at the wrong time. And I know that's not going to happen really often, but when it comes to a post and I'm posting something, I'm very sensitive to the fact of people have their hangups, and I want to always come off as that professional and be relatable to them.
That's a great point. G's jumped in, and he's stuck in a different time zone, but he jumped in a little while ago. I haven't acknowledged it. The fact that the Godfather's in here. I don't know if you've been listening or not, but you've made some comments out there. And do you have anything you want to bring up and talk about the discussion either within the community or with anti-gunners?
Yeah, so you guys have been talking about a lot. So
we have, yeah.
I wrote some notes here. I don't agree with everything that's said. I agree with a bunch of it. So I'll start off with the wasted potential and shaking your fist at other people's content. I guess everybody, what if someone told you about what to put in your comment, in your video? Even if it's, you know, for the puppies or something, there's a certain amount of, we get to do what we want, and wishing other people to do something different than they're going to do or they want to do is frustrating if at best, right? Or, you know, potentially hostile, you know? I mean, it just seems like a waste of time. So if I want to look at a waste of all potential, I look at all the money spent on sports, or at least professional sports. If you want to get mad at or get frustrated at a lack of useful, you know, use of money. But as far as the large channels and stuff, I'm going to say what I like to say: value your efforts. Like you said, we as individuals amass more content than any large channel can, or any large channels put together. If you look at it strictly from a subscriber base, that's not the only perspective to use. That's not the only characteristic to use. So YouTube exists because back in the day, when there was only television, there was things like that video show with what's his name from that one, Full House or whatever, you know, the show where people would send in their videotapes.
Right.
YouTube,
funny
people wanted to see individual content, and people wanted to make individual content. YouTube thrived and got to where it is because people like to create on their own, and other people like to watch that. So just because YouTube has been around long enough that the old-fashioned paradigm of like celebrity and hero worship has worked its way into it, the core of YouTube is the idea that individuals create content, and a lot of individuals absorb that, you know, consume that content. So value what you're putting out there. If you don't like what anybody else is doing, no matter if they're big or little or anything, put something out there to counter it. Complaining about what somebody's doing is sort of like what you guys started out kind of complaining about, being frustrated about. It's people that do nothing and complain. So if you're doing something and somebody else is doing something else, just do something to counter. Or if you don't like the lack of what somebody's doing, then put something out there. Somebody was asking about what can be done. Do something and then point at it. And if it's not perfect, at least something that something started. So the same way that they say all evil needs is for good people to do nothing, all bad content needs is for viewers to do nothing. So either comment, you know, use the platforms that are there. And if you don't like what's out there, trust me, you don't put a flag up with, you know, some sort of disrespect without me commenting on it. At least I don't, if I see it, I comment on it. It doesn't change every person's opinion of how to respect the flag. And it certainly doesn't make the internet different, but it's an effort. And if you don't like what people are doing, do something and let them know about it. And that's about the best we can do. And don't get frustrated if immediately it doesn't change.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of this is going to come down to the discussion is going to be, and we talked about this earlier, is being comfortable in your own skin and being willing to put yourself out there as a creator and understand that if you only have 10 views on a video, that's 10 people that took time out of their lives to listen or watch what you had to say. And it's like Clover said before, all it takes is one. It's one person that you could, and you don't even have to change their mind. It's plant the seed. It's I've got a sorry about that. I've got a text coming in from the chat, so I'll look at that in a second. But if you can plant a seed and have someone think about this later on and say, you know, I was talking to this guy that was at the range where in Walmart, and I asked him about his gun, and he made a comment. It's made me think. And you know, they talk about facts versus emotions. They use emotions. We try to use facts and understand that they don't listen to our facts. They don't care about our facts because they don't think that our facts are true. They think that the useless stuff that they're putting out there is the truth. And so when we try to come back at them with facts, sometimes if you should be able to tell very quickly if someone's going to listen to those facts or not. If they could care less about your facts, move on. And I was at SHOT Show watching Maj talk, and something profound was said that by Zeke that I use now, and I'm going to continue to use, and I think everyone should at least the premise of it use. And he said that instead of trying to push facts in their face, try to get emotional with them, try something different, and that's try to find a topic that they can relate to. And he used an example, and I've used it, and it's worked. It absolutely has worked, talking about kids. And if they sit there and say, well, why do you need this? Why do you need that? And we, you know, we don't need that because the church was shot up, so we want to ban ARs. We want to ban bump stocks because the Vegas shooting, all that. And ask them simply, can we start a conversation? Do you have kids? And if they say yes, you say, do you have more than one kid? If they say yes, then ask them very simply, if your first child breaks curfew and you're going to ground her, do you ground the second child as well? Well, why? Well, of course not. Why would I do that? Well, why are you trying to punish us and ground us because someone broke curfew or broke the law? And if you start putting it in a situation where they have to relate to real world scenarios and take the gun out of it, but make it about a real scenario, I've actually found that it works very, very well. So what I want to start doing is we're going to start going through the room, and I want to ask everybody, when they're going to have a discussion with someone who they feel is either anti-gun or at least questionable, I kind of want to go through the room and say, hey, how do you start the conversation? Do you start it with a fact? Do you start it with a story? Do you start it with an anecdote? How do we start it? Because there are a lot of people out there that are maybe watching that don't know how to start a conversation. So I want to pull Skip out. I'm going to throw you under the bus first and say, when you're having a discussion and someone brings up guns to you, what's kind of the first go-to thing that you do? Is it facts? Is it emotions? Is it a story, or what?
I go straight to facts. I'm just like that. I ask, what do you care about the most? Do you have a family? Do you have a significant other? And I break it down into a lot of different scenarios. I talk about if you were at the store and something happened at the store. And so for me, with my kids, if I'm out in public, I need a way to protect my kids. 911, or there's not a cop in my back pocket, or he's not driving around in my car with me, you know? So if I need something, I need to be my first line of defense. So I can relate in a lot of different ways, as a mother, as a woman, as just a person with a small stature. I'm only 5'2". When someone who's bigger than me, or someone who can be the same size as me, and I just can't defend myself properly against them, I talk about all those types of things, and it's always their pain points, because that's where you're going to get them. You have to find out what their pain points are, and sometimes they just don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point. And coming from the perspective as a mother or as a woman, You would obviously have a different perspective of that conversation than the rest of us. And that's great that you have facts, but you can also relate it very, very quickly, especially if it's another woman. I'd imagine it's almost a blessing for another woman to ask you, because then you can relate immediately with them. Whether or not they want to listen to you is another thing, but being able to relate with them, you can probably do that very quickly.
And then I even talked, when it comes to men, it's men that they need to be able to defend their families. Like, although I'm not a man, I could imagine as a male, like, that would be the worst feeling, is to know that you can't defend yourself or your family. And I met someone at the podcast thing again, and he talked about how his wife automatically assumed that he had a gun and that he could protect them. And they thought someone had broke in one night, and she's like, "Babe, go get the gun." And he's like, "Oh man, I don't have a gun." She's like, What do you mean you don't have a gun?" And he shared that story with me, and he said, he went out the very next day and decided to make that purchase. But it's just things like that, to where people, you just don't know what you don't know, and just sitting down and having those heart-to-heart conversations with them and telling them how they need to be I'm really big on not being a victim. Victims can be males, victims can be females. Be proactive, so that if the situation arises, that you can properly defend yourself and that you don't have to become a victim. And it's not always, and I really educate people on, it doesn't have to be a gun. There's a lot of different tools that you can use. And although when you actually draw out your firearm, you need to be ready to use it. But sometimes it may be that you pull it out and they're going to go the opposite way. That could be a huge deterrence.
No, I agree 100%. And that's something that a lot of people in our community may not want to hear. They may not want to hear it doesn't have to be a gun. They want to hear it's always the gun. But
but you can't always have a gun.
That's correct. And you be able to defend yourself. And when we talk about defend yourself, we don't necessarily mean you have to, I hate to say this, you don't have to end the life of someone else. I tell my daughter all the time, growing up, I've taught her a lot of hand-to-hand different stuff and different ways, and say, look, you don't have to end that life. All you're trying to do is get away from that threat. And sometimes you got to go fisticuffs. Sometimes, I tell her, I said, it sounds bad, but if someone's attacking you, kick them in the midsection and run. Sometimes it's as simple as that. And there are no rules when you're fighting for your life. So guns, some people might not like that, but you don't always have to have a gun. That's a great point. Sandy, when you're approached or you see someone who's blatantly anti-gun, or someone's blatantly questioning guns, and you want to strike up a conversation, what's kind of your go-to start?
To be honest, I live in an area where that's happened to me once in my life. And it was right after Parkland last year. So I haven't had this conversation very much. So I'm trying to listen as much as I can. And I've got another question similar to this, but
sure,
later on, if you don't want to get into it tonight, that's fine. But I would like to ask the panel a similar question, as far as not anti-gun people, but apathetic gun owners. I don't care about the bump stock ban because I don't have one. I think they're dumb, or whatever. I have an SKS. It doesn't affect me. But you can cover that if you want to. It's not my place. But as far as anti-gun people, the one time that we talked about it, it just came up because of the all of the laws that were immediately, I think, just dusted off literally and proposed immediately following the tragedy in Florida. And so the conversation just naturally went there, and I didn't realize that the person that I was sitting at the table with, out with some people, my wife's coworker and her husband, didn't really know much about the people I was sitting at the table with. All of a sudden, we find ourselves on opposite sides of a line in the sand, and that throws another dynamic into it when it's somebody who, they were quote unquote, they're a friend, I don't spend a lot of time with these people, but my wife did at that job. And, these are people that I don't want to burn a friendship, and I don't want to make things awkward for her. So that kind of helped. I don't know. I had to keep that in the front of my mind as we're talking. And then, yeah, I mean, all I could do was try and educate. You know, I don't carry a gun because I want to shoot anybody. I don't carry a gun because I want to kill anybody. I don't carry a gun because I want to force my will upon anybody. I carry a gun so that nobody forces their will upon me or my family or anybody that's with me. And to try and draw some parallels, I mean, anybody who's studied martial arts, my understanding is the first thing that you learn, this is not something that you use to attack. It's something that you use to get out of a fight or to end a fight or to use just for defense. And I think that carrying a firearm is the same thing. So that's really the only direction that I could really take it. And then we kind of just agreed to disagree and move on to other topics in the interest of keeping the night cordial. The one time that it happened to me. So,
right. Philo actually brings a point out there I want to touch on before we move on to budget real quick. And he said, I've had people tell me they would rather lose their life than to take someone else's life. So he typically will ask about family and kids. And that's a great transition because I can sit there and if I'm anti-gun and I have an issue with pulling that trigger and taking someone's life and I'm dedicated to that thought process, I'm probably thinking selfishly, I can't take someone else's life. I would rather die than take someone else's life. But that's a great transition. You may want to die, but do you want your kids to die? Do you want your wife to die? Do you want your husband to die because you're not able or willing to pull a trigger? And that's a great transition because that's going to at least make them think. And like I said, sometimes we're not there to change their minds. We're there to make them think what ifs. And sometimes those think what ifs and those seeds being planted, it might not take hold for another 6 months or a year or 4 years. But eventually, if you make enough sense and you bring about it in the right way, there's a chance that they listen. Budget, what about you? Do you have anything that, in discussion that you've had, anyone that kind of sticks in your mind that worked or didn't work?
Well, the first thing I do is I ask questions. Anytime, to put it in language that I know you'll understand, what's the first thing you do when you're planning any operation? You gather intelligence. You have to get information. You have to find out what the other person believes. You have to find out where they're coming from. And once you get more information, then you start asking questions that make them question their own beliefs and standpoint. For instance, I've the example you just brought up is one that I've actually used. I was having a discussion with somebody who was a pacifist, nonviolent, just freshly married, with a beautiful young bride. And he's like, if someone went to attack me, then I'd give them whatever they wanted, and I'd do whatever they asked me to do because I'm not going to hurt anybody. So I pointed at his wife and said, but what if they want something from her? What if they're going to hurt her? What if they're going to take her and leave with her? What do you do then? And he just stopped, and you could see that it was a light bulb moment where he was starting to question his own beliefs and assumptions. And that's I think it was what was the phrase that Skip used? The points of pain. That's exactly it. You have to find that. Yep. You have to find whatever that person's buttons are. And I hate to make it sound so manipulative, but you have to find out what that person's buttons are in order to push them.
Yeah, it's the Art of War, and if you guys haven't read the Art of War, you need to read it. It's obviously been around for centuries. It's awesome. But yeah, I agree with you. In some of my experiences in the military, I was in the intelligence community, and part of my thing was interrogation and reading people, learning how to read people very, very quickly, and not necessarily exploiting weaknesses, but at least identifying weaknesses. And if you have a chance to exploit that, you can. And interrogation and all that, that's kind of what we're talking about is if you're asking questions, you need to ask the right questions. If you're going to make points, you need to make the right points. You can't have the same conversation with a 60-year-old man that you can with a 25-year-old woman. That's just not the reality. And you have to learn, like you said, one of the things that I've been trained in is the art of interrogation, and the art of war makes complete sense to me. Is finding weaknesses, exploiting weaknesses, and sometimes their weakness is their opinions or their facts or their stance. They hear something on TV and they just spurt it, just say it, splurt it out. And sometimes that's their weakness, is ignorance. And sometimes education, like you said, is great. Sometimes it's making it real, like you did with the wife or the kids or whatever. Everyone's got a weakness, or everyone's got a point that is the aha, I get it. And it's our job to find what that is. And that's in the essence and the basic side of things. That's what we need to do, is in a respectful, civil way, try to figure out where they're coming from and why. Sometimes for me, the best way to start out is asking them questions. Let them, why do you hate guns so much? Why do you, this, that, and the other? Why do you want this banned? Why are you so vocal about this? What has happened in your life that has put you in this position? And let them tell you, and you've got them. They're going to give you whatever material and whatever tools you need to argue against them, because they're going to tell you everything. They're most of them are so emotional that they want to start telling you all these things as why they hate, what we love. Use it. So thanks, Budget. Mike, what about you? You're looking busy over there. Like Skip said, you're looking busy, but I don't think he is. I think he's probably watching TV or something. But no, when you have a discussion, is there something that is it emotion? Is it facts? Is it a story? What is it that you've done, and what maybe have you done that hasn't worked?
All depends on my setting. So for instance, if I'm giving a class and if, everybody's there for the instruction of the handgun or the firearm. So, I might play devil's advocate just to get a conversation going to open minds. But just like the other day when I'm on, downtown and this lady attacks me for, being a Second Amendment supporter. And then I just asked the question, okay, so why? Why are you coming at me like that? Because I like guns, and she said her piece and I just asked why again. I asked 3 times. And then we went into a history lesson. Then it went into okay, this is why I carry guns, but why are you against guns? Then the story came out why she was against guns. Then we sat down, and now the lady's going to end up coming to my free basic class that I give once a month. So
there you go.
Yes, it's a matter of how you present it, but as long as you keep your cool, it should never go into a fist fight or emotional baggage, I guess you can call it.
Unless they start it, then I'll finish it.
Like, that's a different scenario.
A whole different issue.
But the best part about it is as long as you can keep your cool, and even though they're getting fired up because their beliefs and are driving their emotions, right? Because they don't know the facts, and that's what it comes back to. Whereas, just like Clover said at the beginning of the show, education is the forefront of what will bridge people together. And of course, like I said, if you dig into history, you could see what a lot of it is, what I'm saying? But if you break it down to a specific way of history, don't candy coat it. You have to come in with the hard truth. Right. And then as soon as you
in a positive and not militaristic way,
Correct. So like I said, as long as you present the hard truth, what I'm saying? And then you can actually bring it back to say, okay, like for instance, part of that conversation is like I told the lady, how can you hold me liable for me liking guns when our country was founded on a gun?
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? And then that kind of opened her mind. And then I had to go back and tell her, like, okay, it was another country that gave us guns so we can fight for our independence. But yet now I'm asking you to support your rights, whichever rights you want to go for. But I understand the Second Amendment is the bridge to all the other rights.
And I think that there's an argument that a lot of people have, and they'll sit there and say, the reason why we haven't had a war, an outside war, on our home soil since gaining independence, really. I mean, you had the War of 1812 and you had other skirmishes, but an all-out war, no one's really truly brought forces and attacked us a whole lot. It's because they know that they don't have to deal with just the military. The military isn't what they really have to worry about. It's everyone else that might be able to defend themselves from not only a tyrannical government, but an invading government. So I think that it's one of those things where the rest of the world knows that we have guns and we're willing and able to use them. And that does help our perception. G, I want to bring you in a little bit, and you've been doing this for a long time. What are some beginning thoughts or phrases or ideas that you've had that worked, and maybe one that or something that hasn't worked over the years?
So I don't hang out with people that don't hang out with guns, right? So I don't have that opportunity very often at all. So I've only had the opportunity a few times and it's failed. I've never won anybody over, I don't think, in a confrontational type of conversation. So first I'll just throw out some points that I've, like say, over the years, I think are good and seem to work for people. And then some alternative point of view for everybody that's been fixated on self-defense. So everybody, all these conversations are going to be different depending on who you're talking to, of course, right? And then, hey Tony, I'm still in Clover's or in Ghost Chat. I'll be in a minute. Okay. We got hold on. We got you know, you're having a conversation with different people, so it's going to be a different conversation with them. But then if you take that same person and have a conversation at lunch and have a conversation at an anti-gun rally, you know, it's going to be a different conversation even with that one person. So keeping all that in mind, don't assume, and we all assume when we have these theoretical conversations with the antis, we're assuming that they are against full autos only, or that somehow the definition between a full auto and a semi-auto makes a difference to them. Their concept in a nutshell is that our childish need to play with guns, or our like fear of everyone and our paranoia, is what feeds it. So getting into the nuance isn't going to help somebody when their perspective is that the crime that we're concerned about is a result of our fixation on these things. And all the things that we're afraid of is a never-ending loop based on our need to have these things around. Their concept is that a world without them is less violent. So having a conversation with somebody and expecting to change their mind, you talked about that earlier, you can't necessarily assume you're going to start changing their core beliefs and their core positions on life and self-protection and all that kind of stuff. Next, I'll bring up these people are not fighters. So challenging them on personal security or the security of others, yeah, you'll make them freeze up, but you know, you can yell at a puppy and make them freeze up. That doesn't make you win, and that doesn't make them learn. And then I'll just leave it where we live in a safe country. So referring to like this doom and gloom that we have to carry guns because we're afraid, again, plays into the concept that they are being fed that we're paranoid. We live in one of the safest countries. We shouldn't be feeding into the NRA's bullshit or the anti's bullshit that this is a violent country. If you want to educate, let's talk about, you know, we live in a country that's 300 million people plus, and all the violence is in a couple of counties. So when we really want to talk about the numbers, you know, besides suicide and besides the 5 counties, it's a very safe country. So if we're talking about, you know, this anti-gun or getting rid of guns, we're really talking theoretical. You're not going to be affected by them. I'm not going to be affected by them. Most people in the country are not going to be affected by their entire lives by guns. So, you know, start putting it in a frame where you can talk to them about, you know, is theoretical or cerebral, but trying to get them involved when it's not their motivation or their way of life, I think is a tough one. And I don't think you're going to sink as much as you'd like. I think they're going to stop the conversation, but I don't think it's because they're learning. I think it's because they get scared and they freeze up.
You know, I think that's a great point. And there's something to be said about, we've talked about changing their minds and planting a seed. And sometimes neither one of those are going to happen, but maybe we should start talking about understanding also. is if you can make a valid point and a valid argument to someone that is just against it, maybe you can sit there and say, okay, obviously you are not for self-protection or you're not for this, but can you at least understand why I am? And if nothing else, they can walk away understanding why we feel. And if we're sitting there yelling at them and just trying to force facts like a water hose down their throat and all of this, make it real with them. And if they can walk away and say, you know, I don't agree with anything that guy says, but I understand it. I understand now.
Now, let me throw at the facts I think are appropriate and useful. I don't necessarily think nobody agrees. Nobody really says you throw them out there first. It's not your first card, but you have a depth of facts.
Absolutely, you do.
XYZ, you can counter it with the actual fact. And well, what about XYZ? Well, here's 3 or 4 facts that challenge that perception, right?
Yeah, and the facts, what I'm saying is the facts might not change their mind. The stories, the anecdotes might not change their mind. But if we have that and they walk away from our discussion saying, you know, I really had an interesting discussion with that guy over there, and he's a gun guy. And I told him this, that, and the other, and he came back and told me some facts that maybe counterpointed what I thought was real. I have to go look it up. And I don't agree with him. I still don't think he should have a gun, but I understand why he thinks he should. And that's just as powerful as changing their mind sometimes, is understanding why we are passionate about having guns. We're not saying you have to be, but please understand why we are. And then sometimes that's as more important as anything. Clover, what about you? Talking about the kids and parents that you've worked with over the years, you know, obviously you've probably been around more pro-gun people where you live, but I'm sure you've run into some that weren't.
Yeah, I mean it's a little different when you're talking about, you know, people into the program. That's built-in structure and safety. That's a whole other conversation,
right?
Because those people are usually coming to the table. They're looking for the conversation that way. So, but you know, my approach, I've had it multiple times over the years. One particular instance I'll hit on here in a minute sticks out, having to do with 30-round magazines. But my approach is typically fairly mild, and I try to go in and I try to read the person. Like Budget said, there's a lot of recon involved when I'm having that discussion, and I want to figure out if there's some type of an emotional attachment there, because if there is, then we definitely need to address that and try to deal with it. You're not going to leapfrog over that, not productively anyway. So then outside of that, I like to go into a situation to where I lead them into asking questions, but I lead them into those questions. And I'll give you the example of what I'm talking about with this 30-round magazine. I had a guy he had seen I was carrying one day, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, I never could do that. I'm not big on the whole gun thing, blah, blah, blah." You know, I said, "Oh, yeah." And he's like, "Yeah," he said, "You know, they're trying to do away with the 30-round." And I was carrying a revolver, so I don't know what the 30-round, how the 30, you know, he immediately jumped to the 30-round magazine. But he said, "Yeah, you know, they're trying to get rid of those 30-round magazines." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "What, you know, what's your thoughts on that?" And he goes, "Well, I don't see why anybody needs a 30-round magazine to hunt." And I said, "Okay." And I conceded that. I said, "You know what? I do a lot of hunting." I said, I don't need a 30-round magazine to hunt, but you know, here's the thing. Where's the harm in you know, in having a 30-round magazine to hunt? You know, you're putting a negative connotation on it. You know, so my response to you would be, where's the harm in having what extra damage is it doing? You know? And he didn't have an answer for that, and he jumped to, well, it makes it a lot easier for you know, people, you know, to reload, blah 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 blah. And this was pre-Sandy Hook even,
right?
And so I thought, okay, I see where he's going. So I'm gonna walk him up a path here. And I said, well, let me ask you something. I said, what do you know about shooting sports? And not a whole lot. I don't guess. You talking about like the NRA marksman? And I'm like, no, I'm talking about, you know, 3-gun. You know, I said, you've got service rifle. You know, you've got several different things where the 30 round magazines come into play. Just so happens he was a baseball fan, and I said, he's like, yeah, yeah. And so anyway, we talked about competitions a little bit. I kind of educated him on that. Questions. I don't exactly remember what I answered those. And I said, well, you like baseball. Let me ask you this. I said, do you think that anybody for a second, would you stand for a second because bats are used in criminal activity all the time. I said, and I would contend probably at a greater rate than firearms a lot of times in a lot of areas. And I said, would you be okay if we come out tomorrow and said, well, we've got to do away with all the bats, or we've got to cut down the weight on a bat. You can't be any heavier than this or any longer than this. And he said, well, no. I said, why not? He's like, well, that would hurt. You wouldn't have near the hitting averages or the blah, 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 and the home runs. And he was more of a sports guy than me. But he correctly answered that question. And I said, then why would you do that to the shooting sports sector? Those people aren't hurting anybody. And then again, he went back to the whole, if you're going to create chaos, and I said, well, let me ask you. I said, have you ever shot anything? And I knew he owned firearms. Knew he had one for at his house. I mean, I know he does. But I said, have you ever shot an AR? Have you ever shot anything with a 30 round magazine? What do you know about them? Well, he answered nothing. And so we got into that, and I said, the competition thing really will open a lot of eyes for you. I said, I would highly recommend that you look into some of that. I said, because you'll easily see that, with the minimal amount of time that it would take to swap out 3 magazines as opposed to, having that one. I said, it's pretty much going to be the same amount of chaos either way. I said, and the average person can learn to do that very, very, very quickly. So I said, and you're talking about a limit on 30 rounders. I said, but if you've got 20s, even, that comes into play. So,
right.
And he followed along. He did. I seen him later. He did look at some stuff. We had some more productive conversation. I kind of moved him down the pipeline a little bit. Ultimately, like G-Web says, with most of these people, you don't know where they end up, and I think it's important, whoever said it, and it may have been you. That's why I think it's important that you try to leave on a civil note, as best as possible. You try to not leave in a screaming match and a cussing match and stuff like that, because that's going to completely taint anything that you've done. They're going to leave and you're crazy, and they're not even going to reflect on that later on. I don't think they're going to dismiss it. But you plant those seeds as best you can, you educate as best you can, and then like I said earlier, a lot of these people, their perception, their belief is based on a culmination of what they hear, what they see, what they've been told, and life experiences. And the life experiences is the big one. So you plant those seeds, you walk away civil, a life experience, something happens to them that the light bulb goes off. They remember what you say. And then potentially, that it may not necessarily bring them over to our side as an advocate. We've kind of started out talking about advocates and activists and all this, but as long as we've got somebody that doesn't mind, they don't mind us, being able to exercise our Second Amendment right, whether they exercise it or not, as long as they don't mind us being able to exercise that, and as long as they're on our side when it comes to, hey, that's a right, leave it alone. I don't care. I don't care if they ever shoot a gun. I don't care if they ever go to the range. I don't care if they, necessarily even know how a firearm works. I think everybody should. That's an opinion. But, at the end of the day, I don't care. So, that seed can manifest in a bunch of different ways. And,
Right.
Yeah, we just have to wait it out a lot of times. It's a long game.
That's right. There's something to be said about, not leaving an argument mad, and something that my wife and I've been married for almost 23 years next month. And we have a thing, and it's nothing. We didn't sit down and say, okay, here's what's going to happen for the rest of our marriage. It's just one of those things we both kind of believe, that we never go to bed angry. We can have some knockdown dragouts in our last 23 years. And for people that know me, I can fly off the handle at times. And once I do it takes a while to get me mad, but once I get mad, I can be relatively explosive sometimes. So, but I try not to go to bed angry. I try not to go to bed mad or in an argument. And so the same thing is, if you take every discussion the same way, it can get fiery, it can get emotional. But if you leave that discussion at least respecting and agreeing to disagree in a respectful way, then maybe there's an opportunity for a later discussion. We're going to start closing the doors and sweeping the floor. I know Sandy's got a show here in a little bit, so I want to start with him, because I know you guys start your show here in about 15 minutes, but let everybody know where they can find you and what you got coming up for on your channel.
Well, again, thanks for the invite and letting me join up tonight. Yeah, check me out, Sandhill Shooter, on YouTube and on GunChannels. We will be going live here about 9 o'clock Central Time. We will simulcast over on GunChannels as well. So check us out on either one of those places. And other than that, you never know what you're going to see on the channel as far as videos. You never know where the chats are going to go, which is my favorite part of doing the live chats. So check us out, and you can find us over on Facebook as well, Sandhill Shooter.
Thanks for coming, brother, and be seeing you soon. Skip, where can people find you? You want to plug anything, the new podcast or your instruction? What would you like to tell the world, or at least the few that are watching?
So I'm located in Tampa, Florida. So for anyone who is in the surrounding areas, if you'd like to take a class, I do offer classes. You can go to my website, which is skipstacticalsolutions.com, and you can see the classes that I offer and the products that I sell. You can find me on social media, all platforms. I am Skips Tactical Solutions, Facebook, Instagram, and I have a YouTube channel. So I would love it if you would subscribe to my baby channel. My channel is very new, and I have a podcast called Skips Tactical Solutions as well. And I would love if you would listen and let me know what kind of content you would like to hear.
It's an awesome podcast, and understand, guys, she's still active duty military. So she's doing all this stuff while she's an instructor in the military. So she's got many hats. She's doing awesome. Go check out Skip, all of her stuff. Her podcast, new podcast is great. But yeah, keep doing what you're doing, kid. And thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you for having me on. And I want to let you guys know that I do really appreciate you guys open arms welcoming me within the 2A community. I just hit 1 year in business, and I cannot thank you guys for being so awesome enough.
Well, awesome is awesome. You know, we think you're awesome because you are awesome. And you know, we can verify. A lot of people in this room can verify you're not a robot. We've met you in person, so you are a real life person. So it's you know, it's go.
I'm a real girl.
You're not a robot, you know. Budget, what you got? You want to tell people about your channel? Plug anything? What you got coming up?
First off, thanks for the invite. This was a very good discussion. I enjoyed it a lot. Those of you that don't know me, I am Mike with Budget Guns and Gear Reviews. You can catch me here on YouTube at Budget Guns and Gear Reviews. The same on GunTube, GunStreamer, UGEtube, and et cetera. I am Budget Guns and Gear on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. You can check out my website, www.budgetgunsandgear.com, where you can find links to all the videos and stuff that I do on YouTube, as well as articles that I'm writing about the stuff I'm reviewing. Speaking of articles, I'm also writing with Gear Report now, so you can catch some of my content there as well. I do a weekly live stream here on YouTube on my YouTube channel, but the live stream is called The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second. That is at 7 p.m. Eastern on Fridays for now. I may have to change it after a bit if my work schedule changes, which it might do coming up, but that's a while. However, this Friday I won't be doing the show. I will be going out camping, and it's kind of hard to host a live stream from the woods. I mean, I might go live from my
it's just lazy, bro.
Home, but I'm sorry, what's that?
He said that's just lazy.
I know. But that's how it is, right?
Oh, guys, go check out maybe not this Friday, but most Fridays. It's one of my favorite shows every week. He's awesome. Really good discussion. So go check out Budget and all of that. Mike, you got 11 seconds. You've been doing really well, ladies. So I'm gonna give you 11 seconds. Let's see how.
Hold on, man. We went from 19 to 11. Man, hold on now. Now you know my draw is 0.6. So I don't know if I can get
So 11 seconds should be no problem, right?
All right, let's give it a try. You ready?
Let's see what goes. That's right.
All right, here we go. Please call me at 803-250-1256 or go to www.m-wtactical.com. The one-stop shop where you can check out everything I'm a part of, and a direct link where you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram, or do a search for M-W Tactical to find me. Even a link where you can catch up with the Black Man with the Gun podcast with Kim Blanchard and myself, where you can also go to get your M-W Tactical and Black Man with the Gun gear by clicking on the store tab. We're also bringing back the LEO training campaign that you can donate to at gofundme.com/LEO training to put some officers in training for a year at no charge to them, the officer, or the department. The M-W Tactical channel, where we do various reviews or conversations that we put out every Tuesday on GunStreamer, and GunStreamer. And we now have an M-W Tactical podcast that we are going to be putting out every Tuesday as well. Go to the link on the website or click on the post that will be posted on the M-W Tactical Facebook page as well, or do a search on your favorite podcast platform. But most importantly, click on the Patreon link.
That was close to 11 seconds. We'll give it to you this time. We'll give it to you.
Hey, I'll take the handout. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on, bro. G, what you got coming up?
Well, we're going to do an update for the patch here when we're done.
Yeah, the patch batch, we'll talk about that. It got funded, but there is a cool thing. We've got till midnight tomorrow to continue this. It's only going to make it better and more for these projects. But also there's an opportunity to get some giveaway patch sets with the Meal Team 6. And then one of the contributors actually donated their set to give away to somebody. So go check out. Me and Clover put a video out about it. There's an Instagram post. Go read about it. But thanks to G for doing the patch batch 2019, the 2A patch batch 2019. It's awesome. And thank you for bringing all of us together. I appreciate you very much. And Clover, what you got going on? Do you have anything, or you pretty much don't do anything anymore, do you?
No, I don't do a whole lot of anything.
Yeah,
not really. Yeah, nobody has. I don't see anybody that's throwing the patch batch thing out there. But since we
a couple times
kicked off the latest little push on that, we've had two people. Looks like two more backers jumped in for a total of $100. So that's awesome. So if you were one of those, thank you very much. And as far as me, I've got Debbie with Mental Health America will be on the Farm Friday podcast. That's coming up. And then we've got, of course, the Nerd Chat Thursday night. And you can find anything and everything with what we're doing over on clovertac.com. So thanks for the invite. It's been fun.
Fantastic. Yeah, it was a great discussion. Thanks everyone for stopping by. As for our stuff, the best place to find our stuff is at our website, ghosttacticalproductions.com. You'll find links to the podcast, to Drill of the Month, to Operation Training Day, to our videos, pretty much everything that we're doing. You can also check out some stuff that we're doing for gearreport.com. We just put out a review of the PPQ subcompact. I'll have a review coming out on Gear Report for the PK380 and also the TAT 3D humanoid target. That's kind of a cool self-healing polyurethane target that was sent. So all sorts of stuff coming out there. Obviously, check us out on Facebook, Instagram. Go check out the Armed Citizen podcast, guys. It's on all of your podcasts, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, PodBean, anywhere and everywhere that will take it. It is out there. This past week was a great one. It was released on Sunday, and it's a story that makes a little bit nervous in our community. It's about red flag laws and a story about a young man named David who up in Washington State had to get the law involved and some red flag laws involved with a family member with his guns, and he's a gun guy, and it's an interesting story, and how it turns out is awesome. So please go check that out. It's very, very interesting. It's not going to end up the way you think. So go check that out, guys. Thank you so much. We will get out there and make sure that everyone get out to the range, shoot the drill of the month. Go check out myself or M-W Tactical's channel for the drill of the month. We've got Perfect 10 is out there right now. So please get out there and get to the range, be more proficient, take someone with you, turn on the camera, be part of the solution and not the problem. Till next week, guys, we'll see you soon. Semper Fi.